Monsieur le Président du Congrès,
Mr. President of the Congress, Mr. President of the Senate, Mr. Prime Minister, ladies and gentlemen, members of the government, members of Parliament, France is at war. The acts committed on Friday night in Paris and by the stadium of Stade de France are an act of war. They killed at least 129 people and constitute many wounded. It's an aggression against our country, against its values, against its youth, against its way of living. The jihadists, this group, Daesh, is an Islamist army that fights us because France is a country of freedom. It's a country of human rights. In this time of exceptional gravity, I wanted to address Parliament and at this Congress to show national unity in the face of such an abomination and to answer with cold determination to this atrocity that our country was the target of. Our democracy triumphed from adversity, more dangerous than these assassins. Our republic is not at the mercy of these despicable killers. Our will is to put all the people at the service of all the services of the state to the protection of our citizens. I know I can rely on the goodwill of policemen, the military, of you, the representatives of the nation. You know what duty means and sacrifice means. Terrorists think that free people will let themselves impress by horror. That's not the case. And the French Republic has overcome many other struggles. It's here, still alive. And all those who defied it were the losers in history. This will be the case again. The French people are a valiant, resistant people, courageous people. They're brave. They stand up each time one of their children is down. What the murders wanted was to hit innocent people. They are cowards who fired on an unarmed crowd. We're not engaged in a war of civilizations because these assassins do not represent any civilization. We're in a war against jihadist terrorism that threatens the whole world and not only France. In this war that started already several years ago, we are conscious that we will need time and patience. It demands strength that we must fight with. The enemy uses the vilest means to try to kill, but it's not unstoppable. I'll be even more precise. It's not out of reach. In this period that's so difficult, so heavy, where our citizens feel threatened, they must keep their cool. So I call on our compatriots to show the virtues and make the honor of our country, perseverance, unity, lucidity, and dignity. And today, our country is in mourning. We think of all those innocent people who died, killed by killers, weapons in the Paris suburbs. We think of their families who are in pain, in the most inconsolable pain. We think of those hundreds of young people, young girls, young men who were shot wounded and traumatized by this terrible attack. Certain of them are still fighting for their lives. I hail the action of the medical services who've been mobilized since Friday night. Our medical emergency system was prepared for such an emergency, but once more, they accomplished their mission perfectly. I also want to pay tribute to our security forces, who were totally committed to ensure the French people's security, as proved the courage of these policemen who, when about to launch an assault to free the hostages at the Bataclan, and who were condemned to die without this assault, the policemen showed great determination. On Friday, it was the whole of France was the target of terrorism. France, who loves life, culture, sport, partying. France, without any distinction of color, origin, religion. France, these assassins wanted to kill. They wanted to kill youth in all its diversity, and most of the dead were not even 30 years old. They were called Mathias, Quentin, Nick, Jamela, Helen, Valentin. I forget so many others. What was their only crime? It was to be alive. What was targeted by the terrorists was France open to the world. Many foreign friends are amongst the victims, 19 different nationalities. On Friday night, since Friday night, I've been receiving messages of solidarity from all over the world. Everywhere, the three colors of the French flag were on display on the most famous sites in the world. France is always a light for humanity, and when it's enriched, it's the whole world that is plunged. When it's hit, the whole world is plunged into darkness. The acts of war of Friday were decided and planned in Syria. They were organized in Belgium, and they were carried out on our soil, on our territory, with the complicity of French people. These attacks have one purpose: threatening us and putting pressure on us to prevent us in the Middle East from fighting terrorism. We are faced with this organization, Daesh, that has a territorial base and financial resources and military capacity. Since the beginning of the year, this organization has notably struck Paris, in Denmark, in Tunisia, in Egypt, in Lebanon, in Kuwait, in Saudi Arabia, in Turkey, in Libya. Every day there's a massacre, and it oppresses people. That is why there is a necessity to destroy Daesh, which is a topic of concern for the whole international community. That's why I've asked the Security Council of the United Nations to meet as soon as possible to adopt a resolution that will allow us to carry out the common will to fight against terrorism. Until then, France will intensify its operations in Syria. Last night, I gave the order to bomb the Raqqa headquarters of the organization that destroyed a command center and a training center. I congratulate the French pilots who were successful. I also want to thank our American allies who were really helpful in this operation. And I tell the Congress here today that we will pursue these strikes over the following weeks. The French aircraft carrier Charles de Gaulle will go to the Eastern Mediterranean this week. That will triple our capacity to strike. There will be no stop to this. The ones who ordered these attacks in Paris have to know that their crimes didn't make France abandon its determination. It reinforces it. We fight terrorism everywhere, where states are threatened in their survival. That's why I decided to take action in Mali, and that's why we have soldiers in the Sahel, where Boko Haram assassinates, kidnaps, kills, and rapes. We fight terrorism in Iraq to allow the authorities of this country to restore their sovereignty over the whole territory. And in Syria, we are searching resolutely for a political solution in which Bashar al-Assad cannot be the solution. But our enemy in Syria is Daesh. It's not about containing this organization, it's about destroying it. To safeguard populations in Syria and Iraq, and I could add, in Jordan, Lebanon, Turkey, neighboring countries. But the purpose is also to protect ourselves, to avoid that foreign fighters come onto our territory like they did, as they did on Friday. But we have to do more. Syria has become the biggest factory of terrorists the world has ever known. And the international community, and I noticed this several times, is divided and incoherent. France has asked from the very beginning of the conflict that this unity be enriched in order to act. Today, we need more strikes. That's what we're doing. We need more support to people who fight Daesh. That's what we're doing. But we need a coming together of all those who can really fight this terrorist army, that they gather together within a great and unique coalition. That's what we're working on. And it's in that spirit that I will meet in the following days President Obama, President Putin, to unite our forces and reach a result that for the moment is still put back too long. France, considering Lebanon, Iran, Turkey, Gulf countries. With these countries, we want a meeting. There was a meeting of all these countries in Vienna to try to find a solution in Syria. Neighboring countries, everyone has to face its responsibilities. Neighboring countries, all the powers, and Europe. I asked the defense minister to seize, as from tomorrow, his European partners. Within the rule that when a state is attacked, a European country is attacked, all European Union members have to give this country support. Daesh is not an enemy of France, it's an enemy of Europe. And Europe cannot live in the illusion that a crisis that surrounds it has nothing to do with it. The refugee crisis is directly linked to war in Syria and Iraq. Those who are fleeing Daesh are victims of the same system. It's vital that Europe welcomes. It's important that European states welcome those who are refugees, political refugees, and send back the others. This is not the case for the moment. France is working on it right now. It was the first country to warn against it. And France and Germany are trying to do things such as refugees seeking political asylum so that they can be helped. But if Europe doesn't control its external borders, then we'll go back to a situation of national borders when it's not walls and barbed wire, and that will be the deconstruction of the European Union. It's also important that the requests France made, I'm thinking of the struggle against arms trafficking, that are taken into account by the European Union. And the creation of a list of passengers of civil airliners. That's all the demands France is going to carry at the meeting on Friday of the interior ministers of the European Union. In the face of these attacks on our territory, and that take place, that come after the attacks, in January, and all the attacks led in the name of this jihadist ideology, we know, and it's cruel to say so, we know that it's French people who killed French people on Friday. There are on our territory individuals who, from common crimes, everyday crimes, go on to radicalization and to terrorist criminality. Sometimes they went fighting in Syria and Iraq. They formed networks that trained or help each other to command and conduct at some point those who ordered these terrorist attacks. We've prevented several of these attacks from happening in the past few months, and we've known for several months what this organization means and what the preparation looks like. So we have to defend ourselves in emergency situations and in the long run in the name of the protection of our citizens. And in the night of over Friday night, when the shootings, when we had news of these shootings, I gathered the Council of Ministers together to reinstall the controls at our borders and putting in place a state of emergency. It now covers the whole territory, and I have reinforced the possibility to conduct searches over the whole of our territory. There were more than 104 orders, confinements to residency, and more than 160 arrests. The enemy took a new step. Democracy has the means to react. The Declaration of Human Rights says that freedom and resistance to oppression are fundamental rights. So we have to act on that. We gave the means to guarantee the security of our citizens. I decided that parliaments would be seized as from Wednesday to put forward a legal bill to extend the state of emergency for 3 months and to adapt its extent to the evolution of technologies and threats. The law of the 3rd of April 1955 couldn't be appropriate, is not appropriate to the state of technology and threats that we encounter today. But it has two exceptional measures, the confinement to residence and the administrative searches. These two measures offer useful means to prevent terrorism, to prevent terrorist acts. So I want to strengthen these two measures. So the Prime Minister will propose to Parliament to validate these laws, and I invite you to vote them through by the end of the week. But we have to go beyond emergency situations, and I've thought a lot about it. I think in all conscience that we have to make our constitution evolve to allow the public, the powers that be, to react against this terrorist war. Now, these days, we have regiments that are not adapted to the situation. The first is the recourse to Article 16 of the Constitution, which says that the regular functioning of the Republic cannot continue, and the President has to decide who is going to do what. And then there is Article 38 of the Constitution about the state of siege. That's not appropriate. The state of siege is declared when there is a foreign attack by a foreign army, and some powers are transferred from civil authorities to the military authorities. So anyone can see today that none of these articles are adapted to the current situation. The functioning of public authorities has not been interrupted, and it's not conceivable to transfer our powers to the military. But this war of another type against a new enemy calls for a constitutional rule that will allow us to manage the state of crisis. That's what the committee presided over in 2007 by Edouard Balladur suggested. It suggested to modify Article 36 of our Constitution to put the state of siege and state of emergency within the same article. I consider that this orientation has to be considered and taken into account. We need to have an appropriate tool for exceptional powers without recourse to the state of emergency. This rewriting of the Constitution needs to be taken with other measures. It's about the removal of the nationality of someone, removing their French citizenship. We must be able to remove French nationality to take away French nationality from individuals who, even if they were born French, as soon as they are involved in terrorism, and also if they have another nationality. And we must be able to forbid someone with dual nationality from coming back to our territory if they present a terrorist risk. So we need an enormous organization of measures, as our British colleagues have. But we must do it with the respect of our international engagements, our international commitments. With regard to surveying certain individuals, there have been some ideas. So the government is going to seize the Council of State to check that these proposals are valid, that they're in line with democracy. Let's think very much about this. Our Constitution is our collective pact. It unites all the citizens. It's our common rule. It carries principles. It's preceded by a preamble showing that France is a country of rights. A constitution is our common charter. It's our contract that unites all citizens of a country. The constitution is a common pact indispensable for living together. It's legitimate that it has the response and resolutions to fight those who want to attack it. It's the same for all groups that are inciting hatred. Ladies and gentlemen, members of Parliament, please think of the decision that I've taken. I'm asking the Prime Minister to prepare this revision of the Constitution with you so that it can be adopted as soon as possible. Because you're going to extend the state of emergency for 3 months, but after that we have to live in a state of rights to fight against terrorism. And as the threat is going to be long-term, and the fight against Daesh is going to mobilize us for a long time on our external, both at home and abroad, I've decided as well to reinforce the powers of the judicial and security forces, the intelligence services and the anti-terrorism judges must be able to use new technology, the possibilities of new technology to find intelligence. The criminal procedures have to take into account the particular aspect of the terrorist threat. Judges have to have a larger access to intelligence to fight against arms trafficking. The punishments will be heavier, and in the face of terrorist violence, the question of the legitimate defense of policemen will have to be addressed. Still within the frame of the state, a framework of rights. These different topics will be the subject of a huge project on which the Interior Ministry, the Justice Minister, everyone will be involved. These new measures will complete all the measures that have been adopted since 2012, a law against terrorism, a law on intelligence, a law on the strengthening of means of powers. I'm conscious as well that we need to increase the means still, because if we're at war, we cannot be at war with what we had a few years ago in laws of military planning in order to ensure the security of our citizens. 5,000 extra posts for policemen will be created in the next 2 years. That will be 10,000 new jobs all over our mandate. This effort that is considerable, especially in the context of our financial constraints, will allow us to restore the interior security forces to their level of 2007. These new forces will help help us to secure our country generally. In the same way, the Ministry of Justice will have 2,500 new jobs for prisons, for judicial services, and also for customs that will need to be reinforced by 1,000 jobs in order to be able to ensure the controls at our borders. As for our army, more and more mobilized on external operations that we will pursue, but also by the security of our compatriots. Here again, I've decided there'll be no deterioration in the number of jobs in defense until 2019. And this reorganization of our army will be the beneficiary of cyber intelligence. The government will put forward a new planning, a new program to mobilize our services between now and 2019. I also want the defense reserves to be better used. The reservists are a strong element between the army and the nation. They are the elements that come tomorrow to form a national guard. All these budgetary decisions will be taken within the financial law that is being discussed at the moment for 2016. They will translate. I'd take all responsibility for it. It will mean extra expenses, but in these circumstances, I consider that a pact of security takes precedence over a pact of stability. Ladies and gentlemen, members of parliament, the faces of the dead, those of the injured, those of the families, does not leave my memory. This memory nourishes a resolution, a strong resolution that I know is also yours, and determination to fight terrorism. I want France to remain the same. These barbarians who attacked these values will not disfigure us. They will not manage to make us change our face. They can never manage to damage the French soul. They will never prevent us from living the way we have decided to live fully, freely, and we have to demonstrate in a resolute way. I'm thinking of the youth, of these young people who feel wounded, all these victims, and who are wondering about our ability to live in a state of rights. We have to continue to work, continue to go out, continue to live, continue to influence the world. And that's why the big event, international event on climate change at the end of the month will be maintained. It'll be a moment of hope and solidarity, of hope because it's simply the future of the planet, and solidarity because there will be certainly more than 100 heads of state and government who will be there to negotiate a sustainable agreement so that we can live and so that our children and grandchildren can continue to have the planets they inherited. They will also come to France to say to the country of liberty how much the whole world is in solidarity with France. rights of our democracy,
Les élections régionales se dérouleront aux dates
the rhythms of our democracy are not subject to terrorist blackmail. Elections will take place. Political life has
Monsieur le Président du Congrès,
to go on.
Monsieur le Président du Sénat, Mesdames, Messieurs
Mr.
les
President of the Congress,
vous qui
Mr.
représentez
President of
la
the Senate,
tout entière,
ladies and gentlemen, members of Parliament, you who represent the whole nation,
dans toutes ses
you
sensibilités, dans toute
represent it in all its sensibilities, in all its diversity,
Vous êtes les représentants d'un
in
peuple
all its
libre
unity. You are the
qui est
representatives
invincible
of a
quand il
free
est
people
uni et rassemblé.
who are invincible
bien le plus
when they are
précieux.
united and
Nous
stick
devons
together.
éviter surenchère et dérive.
It's our most precious
C'est
asset.
aussi notre devoir de républicain.
It's also
C'est en
our
renonçant
duty
au combat
as
que
Republicans
la République devait mener qu'elle a pu
It's
s'éloigner d'elle-même dans
in
certaines circonstances.
renouncing.
Nous devons veiller qu'il n'en soit pas aujourd'hui.
We have to be careful not to forget our duties.
Nous voulons l'investir de toute la
We
force
want
nécessaire qu'appelle
to
ce
give the
contexte
Republic
nouveau
all
de guerre, oui,
the necessary
pour lui
strength
permettre
called
d'éradiquer
for by
dans le
this
respect
new
de nos
context
valeurs,
of war
le terrorisme,
in order
sans
to
rien perdre
eradicate
de ce qui
terrorism
garantit l'état de droit.
in the respect of our values without
Nous
losing
éradiquerons le
anything
terrorisme.
that
Parce que
a
les
state
Français
of
veulent
rights
continuer à vivre
guarantees.
ensemble,
We will
sans
eradicate
rien craindre de
terrorism
leurs
because the
semblables.
French want to continue living
Nous
together
éradiquerons le terrorisme
without fearing
parce que nous
anything
sommes attachés à la liberté
from
et au rayonnement de la
anybody,
France.
without fearing terrorism, because
Nous
we are
éradiquerons
attached to
le
freedom
pour que la circulation des personnes,
and
passage
the
des
reputation of France in the
demeure
world,
possible et
and
que
we
la
will
civilisation
eradicate
humaine
terrorism
s'en trouve enrichie.
so that
Nous éradiquerons
cultures
le
can
terrorisme
continue to mix
pour que la France
and enrich the
continue
world.
à montrer
We
le
will
chemin.
eradicate terrorism
Le terrorisme
so that France can
ne
continue
détruira
to
pas
show
la
the way.
République,
Terrorism
car
will
c'est la
not destroy the Republic
qui le détruira.
because it's
Vive
the
la République
Republic
et vive la
that
France.
will destroy it. Long live the Republic, long live France.